Yeah, so I grew up in Sydney in a beautiful suburb called Gordons Bay, which is nice beachy suburb, great people, great weather. I know people often think of Australia as, snakes and spiders and whatnot, but this is definitely quite the opposite. It's, a beautiful, leafy, beachy suburb. And yeah, I'm so lucky to grow up where I did. And, I went to school just down the road from the iconic Bondi Beach, which was amazing. And yeah, life was good growing up. It was, your typical heading to school, bunch of mates, and life is great in Sydney, that's for sure.
So I did some research trying to find out, okay, who is Aidan? What did he do before the local project? And I didn't find a whole lot, but I did find, I think it was actually on your website, that you used to be a furniture maker. So I'm very interested as to like, well, when did that become kind of like your career choice? What did you study? Like, how did you decide to dive into it? And eventually, how did that translate to starting the local project?
Definitely, yeah. I think it's there isn't a whole heap out there on me and my background. I've always kind of been, I guess, the listener or celebrating other people's stories. But I guess to bring it back, it kind of all started when growing up, I spent a lot of time on building sites right from the age of 14 or 15.
Really?
My best mate, Jesse, and we used to work for his dad, who was an amazing chippy or a mill worker, you guys would call it. And every summer we would work on building sites, doing the worst jobs you could imagine, from lifting bricks and mixing mud and cutting 4x2s. But I think the interesting thing was that these weren't just any homes. These were, the best of the best homes that we were working on across Sydney and the eastern suburbs of Sydney. So I guess my exposure to, I guess, the process of construction and design and architecture started very early. And yeah, as soon as I finished school, I think I quickly learned that university wasn't quite my cup of tea. I was very impatient and ready to kind of get out to the workforce. And having grown up on those building sites and again, being so familiar with it, I decided to take a leap of faith and start designing and making furniture, which kind of felt like a little bit of an evolution and a bit more in the design world of, I suppose, architecture and having, again, worked on the construction site. So I'd saved up just enough to, I guess, get a little workshop in a communal workshop out in the industrial area of Sydney. And I just started a business, designing, making furniture, using my hands and winging it, to be honest with you. I had, minimal experience in actually designing and making, but I think one of the most fascinating things was, it was in these workshops where I met some phenomenal makers and some phenomenal people and this little kind of small community of makers who just love passing on knowledge and I love speaking to them. And yeah, I guess that's where it all started from a furniture design point of view.
That's really crazy. So you already had that kind of spiritual entrepreneurship in you, it sounds like. But did you study design during college or at the university, or did you study like something?
Or you just went straight, but you went straight into just starting your own thing.
Well, I did study architecture for half a semester, I like to call it. And I think
that counts. It counts.
It counts.
Yeah.
It's on the records. But, speaking quite openly for me, I think I got a very early taste of it. And I was like, the idea of studying for 7 years to then finish and work for someone else. I'm very impatient and I'm very driven and ambitious. It didn't take me long to realize, what, let's try something else. And again, let's have a leap of faith and see where I land.
I'm very curious. So when you were younger and you're working on those construction sites, it doesn't sound like you were doing the high end. Did you say chippy? That's what you call it?
That's Chippy, yes.
Dude, that's awesome.
That
I'm going to start using that term around here.
That's
just
good.
To sound
definitely
cool.
Please do.
But it didn't sound like that you were doing that work. It was a lot of the unfun stuff, as you put it. So when you did they have like woodchop classes in high school? Was that a thing in Sydney? Okay.
Yeah, we had that. And look, it was very basic. You'd make your wooden spoons and you'd make your very basic bits and pieces. But, I did that and that's another place I fell in love with it. But I think, on these construction sites, I would look at these carpenters and shippies and I would look at these joiners and furniture makers that were coming on and I'd idolize them. I'd be like, this is so fascinating what you guys are creating and putting into these phenomenal homes. So I think it was a bit of admiration and kind of absorbing what they were doing while I was, lifting bricks and jealously watching from afar. But I think that's where it started. And like it just felt natural to me, and it kind of just felt like let's have a bit of a jump and see where it lands. And starting to design and make furniture, it was just a very slow process of just putting together my own bits and pieces, watching a lot of YouTube and watching a lot of bits and pieces and learning from these guys and girls in the workshop. And by no means was I amazing at it. I admit that quite openly, my furniture design days, but the process of using your hands and enjoying that was pretty special.
What about the time at university made you decide to go off and do your own thing, aside from the lack of patience? Was there anything about architecture itself that you found that you were unexpected by, you were interested, not interested in?
Look, I think I loved it. Like I did actually love it, but I think, again, the patience that you guys have is phenomenal to work on something for 2, 3, 4 years. And then you get that gratitude of let's go and shoot it and let's go and celebrate it and put it out there. I think I'm so glad I landed in media where I did, because, we get this instant gratification of you guys send these beautiful projects to us and we see them in complete form. And obviously all the blood, sweat and tears that you guys have done over the years, we hear about it, but we just see the final form that it is. So I think, it was pretty apparent to me that I didn't quite have the patience to essentially stick around to do 2, 3, 4 year projects, or let alone 7 years of university and jump into that.
Yeah, sometimes I don't have the patience for it either, to be honest, depending on the days.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
So you start your own shop. For how long did you have your own furniture shop?
So it was a couple of years of making furniture and doing fit outs and odd jobs here and there. But, the story of the creation of the local project was, I remember sitting in this dusty workshop of mine one day, and I decided to create an Instagram page, and really it was created to, put up bits and pieces of the furniture that I was making. And what I also found was, I was talking to these guys and girls in the workshop and asking about the products that they were designing and the houses that they were going into, or the projects that they were going into. And I got a real kick out of, sitting down and interviewing these guys and girls and taking photos of their work. And I remember one day I sat down with this fella called Nathaniel and did exactly that, went through the interview process and asked him about his techniques and where it's going and how it came together. And I decided to put it up on this Instagram page, which at the time probably had, 8 or 9 followers, me and a bunch of other people in this workshop. And I posted it, and it was fascinating to see, my work that I put up got 2 or 3 likes, but this interview and celebration of this other person's work and how it came together, it got 10 likes or 20 likes. And again, I really enjoyed doing that. So I did it with another maker in the workshop, and I did it with another maker and another piece of furniture. And really that's how it all started. And what I started noticing was that, these 7 followers that I had turned into 20, turned into 30, and an interior designer from Melbourne started following an architect from New York, and then, another maker from Brisbane. And what had started forming around, these interviews and celebrations of these people was a little micro community of people who love design and loved hearing about it. And that Instagram page there is where the local project was birthed. And again, speaking quite openly, I think, I got a year or so into it, and I sat myself down and looked in the mirror and I said, I think I enjoy and appreciate celebrating other people's work than making my own. And lo and behold, the local project was born.
So what year was this taking place, the first, year of Instagram posts? So we have some kind of timeline.
So it was 8 years ago. So it was, what's that, 2016. I was a 21-year-old furniture maker, had absolutely no idea what I was doing or how I was doing it. So, but yeah, it's certainly been a journey over those 8 years, but that's where it started.
And there's initial interviews. Like, what was the format of them? Was it on your iPhone, just like talking and chatting with them and then posting it 8 years ago? I don't know if they had Instagram Live or whatever format it was.
Yeah, it was just writing an in-depth caption on Instagram, and I don't even think we had gallery posts on Instagram back then. So
Yeah,
it was one photo of a workshop and a piece of furniture in it, or a person standing next to their work, and a very long caption, and probably a poorly written one at that. I think my editorial team know I'm not the sharpest writer, but just enough for an audience to grab and get some, I guess, some information and some educational content out of it as well. But yeah, that's what kicked it off and really started attracting other people to follow the page. And yeah, I think the biggest catch back then was it wasn't just about the design and the interiors and the architecture that I was putting up. It was definitely about the people behind it as well, and celebrating the people there, which I think is our biggest success as a business, even to today, is it's not just about the design for us, but it's about the people behind it, and hearing from them, and interviewing them and seeing their understanding their personality and their charisma and whatnot.
Yeah, we certainly resonate with that.
Yeah, no, definitely. So you started with interviewing furniture maker, and then when did you move on to actually looking more into architecture and interior design? Was that like soon after you kind of figured out like, well, it needs to be bigger than just furniture making?
Definitely, yeah. I think it started when a few of these interviews started going on site and to installed furniture or cabinetry or joinery that was going into these homes, where I'd roll into site and interview the person on site and take a photo in there as well. And yeah, I think people were resonating with that just as much as the one-off pieces. And I started then venturing out into interior design as a whole, and the furniture that made up these rooms and spaces. And then eventually, the whole projects or house or homes as well. And started, chatting to architects and reaching out to architects, interior designers and other creatives. So it really started as furniture, then into interiors, and then the full architecture, interiors and furniture as well, the celebration of all of it.
After the first year of doing the initial interviews, when it started to get some traction on Instagram, did you at that point also wind down the shop, or were you doing that congruently with starting to venture out and go on site and talk to a bunch of other people like you're saying?
Definitely a mix of both. Yeah, I think in the first year especially, I was scratching my head on how to monetize a business. And I remember I used to reach out to architects and makers and say, hey, for $15, I'll put up a post or something like that. And even still people were knocking me back left, right and center. But, I didn't mind. Again, I just wanted to kind of get out and meet people and understand, what they were thinking. But I was doing furniture jobs. I was doing fit out. I was doing special effects on like movie sets as well. So definitely a mixed bag.
Wait, what do you mean things. Wait, what do you mean by special effects on movie sets? Like physical built things?
Yeah, one of these odd jobs was, I remember David, his name was, from DTFX, and he had reached out one day and said, hey, I need a hand where, we're doing some special effects for a movie or an ad, just out in Adelaide. Do you want to come along for a week and, just have a bit of fun? And I would go out and we would do anything from like mini explosions to all these bizarre little bits and pieces. But that's another thing that I think influenced me from like a production point of view is, being on set, and especially these larger ones where there's, 100, 200 people on set, and you see the camera teams and you see the actors and whatnot. It was another really fascinating thing that I think probably was a bit of an influence in where I've landed as well.
I think you should do a mini explosion on one of your local project video. Be like, hey, so we're coming today.
That's a great idea. Maybe the opening scene.
Attention.
And not tell the architect that it was all special effects and see what happens.
And capture their reaction,
That'd be a nice surprise.
So it's interesting because it feels like it really started organically. Did you at some point thought, okay, this thing is becoming like really serious, I have to come up with a business plan, goals and like a whole structure? Or did you just keep pushing organically, and even still today, like how did you make that transition?
Yeah, I saw these followers that kept coming in, and I got, I think, probably pretty deeply obsessed with the idea of building out this community. Like I would spend, 12 hours some days on my phone just scrolling through Instagram and really trying to understand it as a platform and what made it tick and, what hashtags to use, when to post, what type of captions to do. And I found out that when you did a mix of these bits and pieces and you kind of perfectly fed to the algorithmic or the algorithm what it wanted to see and read and feel, essentially, that's when the growth started rapidly happening. So, I think after a year and a half, we were sitting at, 50, 60, 70,000 Instagram followers, which happened very, very quickly. And from there, I sat down and I thought there's something big happening here, and especially in the digital media space as well. Like, I know even 7 years ago, it was still relatively newish, but I could just see the way that, people within the industry and outside of the industry were connecting with one another and appreciating design on a whole new level. And and I sat down and I put a bit of a business plan, and from the Instagram, my next plan was to create other different mediums and platforms to tell these stories as well. So along came the website, in which it wasn't just, a poorly written caption, so to speak, but started, employing writers to do 300, 400 word articles along with more images. And then, I created the Pinterest page as well, which was another avenue to drive traffic to the website and then back to the Instagram. And what I started noticing was the more mediums that we created, there were these unique audiences behind each and every single one of them. So the people viewing the website were relatively different to the Instagram page, were relatively different to Pinterest and Facebook as well. And by the time I had all these different mediums and channels, I then started putting a bit of a plan together around approaching some, I guess, building material companies that also found the content that we were producing and putting out there quite fascinating. And the idea was to say, let's reach out to these building material companies and say, hey, we're getting into these amazing homes and interviewing these amazing architects and makers. There's an opportunity for you guys to kind of sponsor this feature, or, here's a beautiful home. In order to achieve a beautiful home, you need stone ABC. It was an uphill battle. Like, I remember some of those early meetings a couple of years in, I was walking into these meeting rooms with big companies and even small companies as well, and saying, hey guys, there's this thing called Instagram, and, this is the digital push that we're making. Yeah. And I would get laughed out of these meeting rooms. People would say, digital media, and especially Instagram's a waste of time. Everyone's too young is on it. And, how the times have changed, right? I mean, in terms of Instagram and the importance it plays in, the world today, it's almost like the modern day portfolio. But it was a slog. But, I was very lucky that early on there was, a couple of companies that said, hey, we see what you're doing. Like, we know you're on your way, and we back you. And they gave us a shot, and yeah.
There's a lot of things to kind of unpack with what you said. I think so. At what point did you start approaching potential sponsors? Like 2-3 years into it?
Yeah, about a year and a half, 2 years it was. Yeah.
I think part of this conversation is fascinating too, because you guys have gone really far and do very well, and you're this big proper publication now. But also, in a sense, a lot of the questions and challenges and things that you were working on in the early days, the first 0 to 3 years, are kind of the same things that a lot of, in fact, designers and architects are thinking about for themselves as a way to promote themselves, right? There's a question of, now everyone understands the importance of Instagram and the potential power of it. But for a lot of folks we speak with who don't have a podcast or publication, they just have an office, they're like, okay, how do I tackle Instagram? Do I do Pinterest? Do I do a blog? Do I do, name something else? Like, what do I do between all these different things? I think it's amazing that you were able to dedicate yourself to really understanding one of the platforms and then branch out and do others, because that's always the challenge, right? I feel like now is that all of us feel like publication medias and anyone else feel like we have to be operating at 100 miles per hour for all of these 8 different platforms every day. And it's kind of like overwhelming and difficult.
It is.
And it's also, I think, really great to hear that given the success and the level where you're at, that it started off with, like you're saying, we got 10 followers. That's crazy. Yeah. And then it blows up to 50 because of the work you put in, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know, there's a lot there that I think is probably resonating with a lot of people, to be honest.
Yeah, and you're right. Like running social channels, you know, let alone just Instagram, it takes time and it's arduous. And, you know, obviously there's the whole content side of thing as well, sourcing that and producing that. That's incredibly hard. You know, like I guess my thoughts on from an architecture firm or studio point of view or from a creative point of view is that you've got to be careful not to spread yourself too thin, because there is all these amazing platforms out there from, you know, Facebook, Pinterest, even TikTok now and YouTube and Instagram. You definitely do have to be careful about wanting to do all of them and getting a little bit too ambitious, because if you're putting, you know, 20% of effort across all 8 of these, it's not going to be as effective as, say, putting 90% into Instagram and, say, the rest of your 10% into a bit of LinkedIn and Pinterest as well. But I think probably this day and age, Instagram for me, from a studios and firms point of view, is where you should probably invest the most time. But that being said, like, I think you look at the rise of video content and the rise of educational content and platforms like YouTube and, dare I say it, TikTok, they are becoming so prevalent. And, you know, we are starting ourselves putting a lot of time and effort into TikTok for the same reason I said before about getting laughed out of meeting rooms 8 years ago for Instagram. There's definitely, you know, this same I guess, concept around TikTok where people are going, you know, it's just a bunch of kids that are on this platform. But, you know, those kids, those 20-year-olds now in 6 years' time will be, you know, in firms and studios and specifying product or thinking about their first renovation. So I think that's a bit of a long-winded answer. I'm not even sure if there's one in there, but I think it's a fascinating time in terms of different platforms and socials. But Instagram, I think, is still the winner at the moment.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, in a way, it's kind of, if there is a social media platform that a lot of younger people are using and the older folks are kind of laughing at it, that's actually probably a good sign that you're on the right track.
That's right. That's right.
We had experienced sort of a similar thing with the podcast. You started the local project before we started the podcast, but in the earlier days, it's kind of interesting to see how podcasting has ramped up, and that curve, that chart, you know, is an extreme curve upward. And so now, you know, you have people like Conan O'Brien, name a celebrity, they have a podcast or something. And it really was not that long ago where it wasn't the case. And, you know, people don't realize this, but like podcasts have been around for actually a very long time, all things considered. But in the kind of, quote, early days, we would approach sponsors because we have sponsors. And I remember some of them would be like, so you have like a blog thing, like a casual blog? I'm like, sort of, I guess, it's kind of like a blog, but, you know, I think there's more to it than that. I think there's potential, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a little bit of, now we're just talking shop, I guess, but there's a little bit of, if the person you're speaking with, the audience, the sponsor in this case, if they aren't getting it, then I kind of found there's not much more I can do to help them get it, especially in some cases if they're like 66, they don't even have an iPhone, you know, like I can't convey to you the value of what I think we're doing.
That's right. It's hard to articulate, right? And like, I think a lot of these partners and sponsors, and even again, from a video point of view, some architects are hesitant to take the leap and let us film one of their projects. And it's not until they experience it and the benefits from it, whether it's, you know, sponsoring an episode or whether it's, you know, going through that production phase and filming a project, that you can feel the difference it makes, and you can feel the difference that audio and communication through, you know, podcasts and the power that has, as well as with video, just the actual natural of watching someone speak and how they move their hands and everything. It's but yeah, once they usually get that taste, they feel that the power that comes with it as well.
So you guys do like digital publication, you also do a print publication, and you also do video, like walkthrough through projects. And
we do everything.
You do everything. I found I actually found all of them very interesting, because the digital, of course, you have to have that nowadays. A lot of people don't even buy things that are printed on paper anymore, so that makes sense. The print seems very very carefully made, which again I personally really like, because I feel like it's like, now I feel like books are precious, and whatever gets printed needs to have that feeling of it. And the videos are extremely interesting because from an architect standpoint, you know, we experience the project when we go on site visits, we do 3D models, we go see the project during construction, we see it finished. And then most of the time, the only way we have to show our work to people on our website and wherever is just through photos. It's like a static, you know, thing, when really buildings are kind of living things in a way, and they need to be experienced. So I found those videos absolutely fascinating, because it really gives a chance for anyone who's worked on this project to show the full experience of what the building is like, rather than just a couple of shots of it. I'm assuming,
what's your question?
I'm assuming there is like.
I agree.
But I'm assuming it must take so much work to do that, because we've experienced doing just photo shoots of finished project, and it's like a whole production effort just for
production
like,
effort for a video,
you know, those like 5 shots that you need, right? And I cannot imagine doing a video production of that. And as you mentioned, architects maybe being a bit reluctant, because, you know, sometimes there is a detail you're not super satisfied, or a corner is not that great, or there is things you don't want to show, but it's going to be in a video and it might show. So how does it work?
Yes, it's a great question. It does take a lot of time, and often a lot of convincing as well to go ahead with it as well. But hand on heart, all of that time spent on it and producing it, and not even scripting, but pre-producing it and getting everything ready to shoot it, it is worth it. And I think it's, you know, video for us is one of the defining moments in our business, where when we started releasing video content and doing these house tours and project tours and moving through spaces and giving audiences a feel of what it's like to be in one of these spaces, and again, what it's like to hear from the architect or the homeowner or the interior designer, it's just a whole nother level of connection that you can, I guess, create with your audience. And I felt it instantly when we released our first video, I think probably close to 5 years ago now, 4 years ago. And I saved up every penny we had to produce that video. And I tried to engage the best videographers and our production team that we could, knowing that video really was and did feel like the way of the future, where photography is such an important part of what you guys do and what we do, and it always will be. Photography is amazing, and I love documenting projects through that. But I think, to your point of, like, again, moving through spaces and hearing from the horse's mouth, so to speak, of the decisions that were made and why, and, you know, identifying some of the interesting details and again, just moving through that space, it is so powerful. And we produce a lot of videos, and I think we do anywhere between, last year I think we did probably 80 house tour videos, give or take, and these each take, you know, like 4 to 6 weeks of pre-production, obviously a 2-day shoot, and then post-production, it's whole thing afterwards as well. But we wouldn't change it for a thing, because again, when we started releasing video on our channel, it just the connection you make with that audience, and I guess how far-reaching video content can be through platforms like YouTube and Instagram is amazing. So it's worth it is what I'm trying to say.
How long usually are those videos?
Anywhere between 5 to 7 minutes, give or take.
Yeah. And the only video I could think of house tours would be, like, you know, the ones that realtors do on TikTok or Instagram. And a lot of times they don't know the choices and who did the house. And it's kind of like annoying, honestly. So it's, it's pretty cool.
As we were talking about the benefits and the value of video, it also reminded me that, and I agree, photographs will always have their place and be of great importance and value and all of these things. And photographs also bring a different kind of dimension to the conversation in terms of how something is conveyed, which I think is valuable. But photographs also allow for a lot of kind of strange, how do I say it? Like, from an interiors perspective, it's very easy to, I wouldn't say easy, but it's much easier to set up a scene that looks good. So you can pose a chair, a table, some flowers, and a piece of artwork, take a picture, and that picture you know, it's of those items, but those items tell a much larger story. So it feels like we're buying into this kind of imagination that we have from the picture, which is great. However, I do see a lot of times with those types of compositions, I'm thinking to myself as a designer and architect, where in the house does this thing exist? No one's ever going to sit by this lamp by the window or whatever. Like, this is a completely fake. This is not real. This is a stage set, really. And it's not to say that the rest of the house or the project is not good, but I see, especially for the interns, it's very easy to take a photograph, make it look cool. But I'm like, that actually does not exist in real life, because those 5 items I can guarantee you, they're not sitting next to each other ever. It's not real. Yeah. And I think video is kind of a funny thing, sort of to Marina's point of like, there's a authenticity to it inherently.
Yeah, and like you said, video is incredibly revealing, and it's brutal in the sense that you move through these spaces and you see everything for what it is. And it's been interesting on my end seeing the evolution of styling, in the sense that, you know, we're now speaking to a lot of stylists who aren't just thinking about that one beautiful hero shot or through imagery styling, but we're really kind of asking these guys and girls, hey, we're using moving picture here as well. This is kind of the shot that we're going through. Can you guys think about styling that from, you know, a 10-second kind of slider shot? So trying to create that in a sense and make it look beautiful, sometimes as unrealistic as it is. But I mean, that's the beauty of those photographs and that shot, is that sure, some of it's not exactly practical, but my God, it looks, you know, amazing as well. So trying to apply elements of that to video as well is important, because, you know, we see a lot of projects every day and every week, and when the styling element isn't there, unfortunately, it can really ruin a set of photos, or let alone a video or a home or a project. So it's the importance is definitely there for styling.
Yeah, that's 100% true.
So how does that work? Like, you guys get approached by architects or homeowners who want their houses published? Do you like hunt to find kind of like the ones that you know, could be in the local project? Is there a vetting program or criteria of like, well, you know, this house was published a couple of times, this photo looks great, and then you do a scouting and you're like, I don't know if we can do a video tour of it. Like, what's the process on, I guess, finding the house to publish, and then the whole vetting process to decide if it deserves a house tour or not?
Definitely a mix of both. So we get anywhere between probably, you know, 50 to 200 submissions a week, give or take, which is a lot.
Wait, repeat that again?
50 to 200 submissions a week. It blows our mind sometimes. But you know, we've got a submissions page on the website in which people, you know, upload their images or iPhone shots or plans and drawings and a bit of text and information about the project. That naturally comes through to us, and as an editorial team, we sit down and we kind of review those as much as we can. You know, even with a lot of staff, you know, getting through 100, 200 a week can be hard work. But, you know, on our end, we've got a brilliant network and relationships with a lot of firms and studios, not just in Australia and New Zealand, but now America as well, and North America as a whole. And we're often reaching out to these firms and studios and saying, hey, what's the latest that you've got? And, you know, what are some of the projects that you're working on? And I think, interestingly, like, especially, you know, with video, we don't shy away from projects that have been previously featured through stills before. I think, again, to talk to the difference between stills and video, it's a whole new experience of moving through that space. So, you know, we often see these amazing images that have been on through other publications and publishers, and we go, wow, that's an amazing set of images, and this project is phenomenal. Is there a video on it? Absolutely not. Well, then let's go out there and see if we can get in there. Yeah. I guess the other element to it is, you know, getting into the home, you know, having the clients and homeowners allow access. And it's not incredibly intrusive, but obviously having a small video team over a couple of days, people are naturally saying, hey, not for us. But yeah, again, I think it's just, you know, a lot of stuff comes in and we reach out to a lot, and it's really just sitting around in a circle and saying what is best suited for us and what stories do we want to tell.
You made me think of an interesting aspect to what you do as well. When you mentioned that some clients don't like videos or even photographers coming into the house. And that's often more so well, how do I put it? It happens very often also with very wealthy clients who tend to be very private because they are famous sometimes and they don't like people knowing everything about them. But what's interesting also, and I think the challenge with residential work, single family houses specifically, and a lot of architects I know feel this way when they focus on single family, is they do this body of work and maybe they've been practicing for 30 years, so they have a lot of work, but a lot of it is just not necessarily seen. It's not seen by the public directly, like actually, right? Because who's going to go see this house unless they happen to walk by it, or the house is in a big estate that you could never see unless you're in a helicopter. And so what I'm saying is that I think, you know, what you guys do is interesting too, because it's a very important role for us architects. Like, you're helping us as a community present either our work or the community's work like out there. And there's not really a vehicle to do that when the building is a very private one. It's the only way it's going to be seen by anybody.
Definitely. Absolutely. And I think to your point as well, David, like we've seen great success over the years in reaching out to some firms and studios and saying, you know, show us your latest work, but also show us some of the work that you've done 20, 30, even sometimes 40 years ago. And we've actually revisited some of these projects and gone in there and reshot them and sent our video team and published them in print and digital as well. And the stories and narratives that you get from documenting not only the newer projects, but some of the older projects are phenomenal as well. So it's, I think that's what we see ourselves as, you know, documenting architecture in certain times and certain projects. It's an incredibly important role we play in that part.
It's actually very interesting to be able to revisit a house that was done, let's say 20 or 30 years ago, because, you know, everybody gets excited about the final product just after it's being finished, when everything's brand new and shiny and looks good. But in a way, it's very interesting to look at older buildings and see how they've aged and changed and failed or succeeded, depending on, you know, what time did to them. And I very much like the idea of maybe, you know, visiting one of those houses now and then maybe looking at it again in like 10 years and revisiting it again. It's
a completely different lens.
It's a very different thing.
And especially the landscape as well, you know, depending on where it is as well, and seeing how the landscape has influenced, you know, a building over 20 years. Those are some of my favorite elements there, as well as, you know, how time has impacted the buildings as well. It's it's amazing, but it tells a brilliant story.
Talking about the growth of the local project, I'm kind of getting back to that. So you at some point transitioned to making an effort at all these different platforms, approaching sponsors and things like this. I guess there's two questions. One is, at the 3 to 4 year mark around there, did you have like a plan or maybe not even a plan, but like an idea of the future for this thing? Or were you just doing what you found interesting and whatever was going to happen was going to happen? Because, I mean, you know, people have to realize too, from the early days of what you described to where you are now is so different. It's like so different. It's really different.
Yeah. I think I always had a plan in the back of my mind. I don't know if I ever articulated it or put it on paper, but for me, I loved what I was doing, where I was getting to meet these amazing creatives and makers and again, tell their story and really start creating, especially at the 2, 3, 4 year mark, is creating content, is when we started putting a lot of emphasis on that through video and photography and producing our own works. And I just love what I was doing, and you know, we struggled initially to get partners and clients on board, but at that 2, 3 year mark, I think a lot of brands and partners started noticing us and saying, you know, here's this media publisher who's not just regurgitating the same images or text that are sent to them every time, but they're actually going out and producing content and they're producing work, and there's the ability to kind of create this custom narrative and shoot this content, not only just for the firms and studios or for us, but also for partner brands as well. And it was fun, and brands were receptive, and, you know, our biggest push from, I guess, the business side of thing and working with these partners is that, you know, audiences are incredibly intelligent. You know, the days of, you know, releasing product and shoving it down people's throats and here's the latest XYZ, they were definitely very limited. And our approach to these brands was subtlety and authenticity is the key. And, the best way to describe that is, going into a beautiful home and featuring this home, which just happens to feature, stone or tile ABC. Let's have the architect mention that ever so subtly towards the end of the video or towards the end of the article, and maybe a couple of small photos, because they have authentically specified that product and they have done it naturally. It's not forced or anything. So, and it is actually insightful for the audience too. So that style of marketing was, it was, I wouldn't say it's new or anything like that. I think subtlety's been around for a little while, but I think in our world, the design world, it was just a really effective way to engage audiences and respect them as well without being in their face. So, and, the brands, when they started testing it and seeing the results and the return on investment from their end, they were like, wow, this is definitely working. And, more and more brands started working with us and creating content with us and building their relationships with architects and designers, and which allowed more access for us into homes. And it just kind of kept growing and growing from there. And it was probably at the 4-year point when, we'd created a bit of video and we had a really, really strong digital presence. I sat down with the team and I said, guys, I think we should think about releasing a printed publication.
They were like, what?
They're like, we're already doing 6 different things and now you want to do print, which is like a whole different can of worms.
Exactly. Come on, mate, another one. Are you kidding us? To be fair, they were super receptive, and I think obviously in our worlds and circles, like print is something special, something tangible that you can sit down and digest. But there was a lot of people I told and they said, you are bloody crazy. Like, what are you thinking? Print is dead, it's on the way out. But I could just see how architects and creatives resonated with print, and how people, again, enjoyed their time of just sitting in a chair and consuming something in their own time, in their own silence, and digesting that. So we took the leap of faith into print, and that was another monumental moment for our business where when we released that print magazine, we went from this online blog, I guess people would consider us, to a media publisher. I think that's when we earned a lot of respect in the design industry and publishing industries, because A, print is incredibly hard to produce and put together, but B, it's just, again, another way to connect with your audience. And, we've done print for close to 5 years now. We're up to issue 14 with our magazine. We released our first hardcover book about 1.5 years ago, which we're just doing our 4th reprint of, which is crazy to think. And print is not dead. Print is absolutely not dead. And I think it's thriving, but the key to print especially is longevity. And we didn't go out to make something that is just a quick little glossy flip through and, okay, I'm done here. But, our printed magazine is, close to 400 pages. So it's probably closer to a book. And then our hardcover book is 500 pages. But yeah, again, the key is longevity, something that is not just a great, printed educational magazine or book, but something that is an object that will sit on your coffee table for years to come as well.
Do you think that some of your natural preference, or I guess tendency toward things that are well crafted and just done well, comes from your experience woodworking?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I think the appreciation, especially for the tangible side, the side of things through the print. But during my brief stint in furniture making and designing, I think especially Japanese design and woodworking, I found so fascinating and interesting. Not only just the beautiful products that, the Japanese would produce and still do produce, but the level of care and detail and perfection is something that's always stuck with me. And that resonates with me deeply, and something I try to apply. I'm certainly not always a perfectionist, but absolutely, David, that's been a massive impact.
Interesting.
I could definitely see that. And I think that's also what makes the local project stand out from a lot of other publication, is that level of care and precision and search of
precision. Yeah.
Precision and sometimes even search of perfection. Like, it just feels like there is a lot of thoughts and hearts that's been put in it, rather than just being a platform that just publishes a lot of content and has too much advertisement that you don't even know what the content is, because
the pages are thin. It's like if you sneeze, it's going to disintegrate.
It feels like something you want to, whichever platform, if it's the printed or the digital or the video, something you want to spend time on, rather than just flip through. So I think you definitely succeeded on that.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And I think one of my responses to that would be, I mean, it is our products and our content is made for architects and designers, and you guys do notice everything as well. So, often I get asked, should we go a point of a millimeter thinner on the paper stock? And I go, no, guys, come on. These guys will notice. Let's keep the quality. Let's make sure it's always as perfect as possible, because,
it makes a difference.
That's funny you say that, because that's what I was thinking too, is that you have a very discerning and very picky audience. Let's be honest. Very, very, very picky people. But I think that's also why a lot of our colleagues and us like it, because there's a sense of, okay, so whoever's on the other side of this, like, they get it. They get it like we get it. We're doing different things, but they get it. And especially now with the way that social media works and just how the speed of things, it's very, I guess, actually almost like comforting to have something that's not like that.
Which actually makes me wonder, and I'm not sure if you want to share that with us or not, is who is the audience of the local project? Is it mostly architects and designers, or is it pretty much everybody?
So I think as we've grown, we're now sitting under just under 4 million audience members, which has been, again, a wild ride. But in the first 4 to 5 years, it was predominantly architects and designers and people from within the industry. And I think naturally, as we've grown and grown and grown, I mean, our data says that 36% of those 4 million are industry professionals, so builders, architects, designers, stylists.
I mean, it's a lot, but I mean, like, it's not like that's the majority. That's fantastic.
Exactly. So it's, but I mean, the reality is there's only so many architects and designers and professionals in the world as well. So as we get bigger and bigger, which I don't mind, to be honest with you, I think, a big part of what we're trying to do is normalize and design and architecture and make it even more accessible. And, through the digital world we live in and through what we do and produce and get out there, it's amazing to see that, even some of my closest friends too have, nothing to do with design and architecture are consuming this content. And that really is a big part of what we do, as well as kind of find this beautiful intersection between celebrating and honouring architects and designers' works and telling the story for other architects and designers, but at the same time, making sure that it is also consumable by design lovers too and general consumers, which is a very fine line to play. But again, with people having more access to design and more appreciation for beautiful homes and houses and projects, it's certainly working.
Is one of the challenges with balancing on that threshold, that fine line, as you said, is one of the challenges that architects, they tend to have their own language sometimes? Like, what are the challenges with trying to balance it? I mean, from my view, I see it that architects oftentimes are a little bit more introverted. They are very good at talking with other architects. They're not necessarily the greatest at conveying the value of what they do to other people. These are generalities because they're outliers for sure. But yeah, so what are some of the difficulties with being on that edge?
Yeah, it can definitely be a challenge sometimes. I think, I think back to some of the video interviews we've done, and some of the language that is used is sometimes very hard to digest, especially for, just general consumers or the design lovers. But I think instead of asking people, hey, can you dumb this down a bit, right, let them be themselves. That's 100%, of course, always fine. But that's opportunities where maybe we also talk to the homeowner, or maybe we talk to another creative who's worked on a project to get their point of view as well. And usually the homeowner angle can be brilliant because, that is relatable to a lot of people as well. And although the architect might be using their language, which is, for the most part understandable, then having that second character or that second voice again, makes it a little bit more relatable as well. So it's about balancing it, I think, without telling people to, change who they are or how they speak. And but yeah, it is tricky sometimes, but it's the beauty of editing, whether it's video or written as well.
I'm just laughing because I'm just imagining an architect using a word like partie or charrette, and then there's like a cut and someone fills in a different word.
It happens. It happens.
Like a Wes Anderson definition shows up on the screen or something. I'm curious about the team. Like how big is the team? Are any of them designers or architects? Or are they more in the media kind of background? Like who is behind all of that work?
So there's 60 of us now, which blows my mind.
Oh my gosh!
So it's been crazy, and I think the scary thing is, like 3 years ago there was 15 of us, give or take, and
15.
15, yeah. Jeez. So that much growth over a few years has been amazing, and we're not slowing down either. I think is crazy too. Like I have no doubt in 2 or 3 years we'll hit 100. And for me, and I want to say, like, it's never been about let's get as many people involved and like that's a sign of success. It's always been a very natural and an organic evolution. But I think part of our success has been the people within the team. We've got a smorgasbord of people of different backgrounds, and we've had people who have been architects in the team. We've got people who have spent a lot of time producing on sets, and we've got writers from lifestyle backgrounds. So we kind of live in this weird world where digital media publishing and publishing as a whole is going through a lot of change. And I think, again, part of our success is we have been disruptors in a sense, and we have had a little bit of naivety, which has actually been a blessing because we do things differently and we think outside of the normal box of publishing. And it's an amazing team. And, we're split up into, there's production, there's editorial, there's partnerships, there's the design team, which, handle the print and all the design assets of the business. There's operations, and there's digital and social as well. So there's all these different departments. And I think the interesting thing about the local project as a publishing business is, when we bring on a new client, it's not just as easy as, okay, we'll, just take that workload on and it'll be fine, split amongst us. But with what we offer and what we do, every single department needs to grow in order to service that client. So that's where that growth has come from. So when we bring on a new client, we need a new producer, we need a new writer, we need a new designer to look after them, and we need another social and digital media coordinator to kind of assist with the content that comes through that as well. So, and very importantly, another department I missed is our in-house production team as well, where we've now got in-house video teams and editors, as well as some amazing producers too.
So when you say client, who does that refer to?
I think for us, like a typical client will be still that kind of building materials company where their products are genuinely specified in a lot of the homes that we feature, or homes or projects that we feature. And when we bring these clients on, it's not just hey, we'll do one video together or we'll do one print ad or whatever it might be. Our logic is very much, to bring it back to the start of this conversation, every medium has a unique audience behind it. So we sit down with these clients and partners and we say, hey, over a 12-month period, let's look at doing, a couple of print ads, a few different print stories. Let's produce 3 videos and let's do 4 photo shoots, and let's do a bit of digital activation. Let's do a physical event. So it's a very multi-medium kind of type of partnership, again, based on authenticity, and based on subtlety as well, where we're just creating amazing content together in partnership with them and putting it out to our audience for them to consume and digest.
Is that typical for a publishing company to do that kind of like planning and strategizing with the client? Because I feel like from just, looking at like whatever magazines, that they just kind of like stick the advertisement, and maybe that's why you guys are doing it differently, right? Is that maybe instead of taking their product and just putting it on whatever media you're using, you think a more like broader picture?
I don't know is the answer to that. I think again, I obviously have no background in media and publishing, and I think
that's so crazy. Also, like, I didn't agree with you. You just said it like you didn't study this,
but it just made logical sense to me. I think this is again where naivety is a bit of a blessing. Where I would sit down with my team and my right-hand man James and say, what do you think these guys want, and what do we want in order to make sure that our audience still love and respect us and consume this content without feel like they're being marketed to or anything like that? And this is the model that we kind of came up with, and it works an absolute treat, and our audience loves it, our partners love it, and we love it because we get to produce amazing content and across a variety of mediums.
So I think it was April of last year, so close to a year ago, you guys decided you started with covering Australia and New Zealand, and I think the Asia Pacific region, but you decided a year ago to start covering Northern America. And I'm wondering, I mean, I feel like there is a lot of stuff happening in Australia. Like, to be honest, all of the great projects I feel like are all happening over there. So, and I mean,
that's just because you're just following the feet of the local projects.
It's probably because of that. I mean, there's great work in the US, but I feel like there is a new, breath of fresh modern work in Australia. It's just fascinating to me. So, where did the idea of covering the US and Northern America came from, and was it challenging for you guys, being an Australian company, to kind of conquer that new territory in a way?
Yeah, I think the main reason why we launched over in North America was really we were just listening to our audience and analyzing the data. I think with platforms, especially like YouTube and Pinterest, they are very US dominated. And, 3-4 years ago, I noticed this increase in US audience. And then when we started blowing up on YouTube, that US audience kept growing and growing and growing. And then I noticed that a lot of our print publications were a lot are getting sent to the States as well, which is, bloody expensive to send over there, I might add. Does your printing happen in Australia? It doesn't anymore. It is overseas at the moment, but we used to. But we're now kind of just trying to figure out a middle point of North America and Australia as well, because Australia Post are licking their lips whenever we send through a batch of books to send through. Yeah, that's far. Yeah, but the launch was really, again, just listening to our audience and analysing the data. And when I spoke about up to 200 submissions per week of projects and topics or profiles to cover, a lot of them were from the US and North America as well, even without having launched there. And we would often get people emailing saying, "Hey, we love what you do in Australia. The work that's coming out of there is phenomenal. Do you have any plans to launch in the US?" And I think, in Australia, we have a lot of respect and love for the work that comes out in North America. And I know that's certainly reciprocated as well. And same with New Zealand. And I went over there with my right-hand man, James, and we did a bit of an exploratory kind of reach out and met with some studios and firms and got some feedback. And we even went over there and took our video team and did a few test runs of videos that we got projects that we got access to. And, we made the leap of faith again in April, and we launched in North America, and we haven't looked back. I think the way the audience is growing there now and the receptiveness to the US and North American content that we're producing is phenomenal. But not just from within the US, but there's a lot of love within Australia and New Zealand looking at these projects too and admiring that too.
Yep. Is there a desire at some point to open it up to, I don't know, Europe or...
You're thinking about France.
I mean, there is a lot of good work in Europe too, and I don't know the publication scene there. I have no idea what exists there.
Yeah, I think maybe down the track, I think North America is such a daunting prospect in terms of how large it is and how much to do. Like I honestly think we've got 5 to 10 years of work to do there to really amazingly set ourselves up there and build an amazing relationships and networks and I guess a band of clients as well. But Europe, I mean, any excuse to get to the south of France would be nice, but I do think it's about 6 or 7 plus years away, give or take.
Do you guys have a team in Northern America to do like the scouting and like physically there, or do you have to get the crew over from Australia?
So we've got one team member in New York, Millie, our amazing senior features writer, and she does a lot of work on the ground there. But for us, we've made the decision that whenever we head to the States, we actually send our own production team over, and that just allows for consistency of the content that we create and the workflow that we've created as well. And it's worked incredibly well. And, you know, like, it's always fun sitting down with the production team and saying, hey, how do you guys feel about going to, you know, LA and New York for 8 weeks? And I'm yet to hear a no or an excited, and, you know, they're always excited and ready to get over. So it's a great opportunity for the team. But I think for consistency of quality of content, it's really important that we do that as well.
How do you guys decide? Well, let me ask this first. I did have another question about just the growth from one person to 60 to wherever you're going to head to next. And this question, maybe it would be interesting to people, anyone who has a business or folks who are interested in having a blog or media company or whatever it's going to be. Like, when was the first time that you brought on someone else to help you, and how did that growth take place? Because that's, again, remarkable growth. I feel like also what we're hearing through your stories is that there are probably several moments where you could have plateaued and just stayed kind of safe and consistent and at that tier. But it seems like, you know, you consistently keep pushing once you get to a certain point. And I guess part of this question also is that there's a lot of people who are very talented at one particular thing. In your case, maybe it's having a knack for interviewing and meeting people, or I don't know, whatever it might be. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to create a company from one person to 60. Like, that's crazy. Like, you're a business owner with 60 people, you know, like, that's from a furniture maker, you know?
Yes. Yeah. I scratch my head often. Yeah. I think, thinking back to it now, like, it's, you know, a lot of the guys that are still here to today, like, they've come on this journey with me. And I think one of the best examples is probably James, our now head of partnerships. He, you know, he came to the business, or he was one of our very first, I guess, employees. And he would, you know, 7 years ago, he would work 10 hours a week. He would reach out to architects and collate some information and collate some images and send it back to me to upload to the website. And, you know, after 3 months of doing that, he decided to work 20 hours and do a little bit more writing. And then after that, I said, you know, I just saved up enough money to pay for a salary. And I said, do you want to come on and be one of our communication coordinators and just, again, help full time, reaching out to firms and studios? And it was probably about 3-4 years in, he said, hey, I love this business. I love being here. I'm really fascinated with the partnership point of view and reaching out to these potential partners and growing those relationships. So he pivoted into partnership management. And yeah, I mean, it's been 7 years of him here now, and he is the head of partnerships. He kind of leads the charge in terms of bringing on new business and bringing on new clients and building those relationships. And he's been on an incredible journey with me, like a phenomenal one. And he's been there through the highs and lows and the stressful moments of, you know, hiring more staff and figuring out how to update systems and processes. And by the time we've updated them, we've got another 10 new staff members. So it's been like that for a lot of the people here today. And I've always kind of bootstrapped this business, and I've always been one to see the growth and potential and never hesitated for every penny that we've made to throw back into the business and invest in the right people to help grow it as well. And I know a lot of people don't always take that approach, you know, that's always about, you know, providing for yourself, and that's totally fine as well. But for me, it's, you know, this growth and this momentum, it's addictive, it's exhilarating. And so my natural response has always been like, let's continue reinvesting this and building something special, because, you know, even from the get-go, whether it's in 5 years or 10 years, I knew something special was on the way, and I loved and I still do love what I do and the journey that's been. So, yeah.
Has it ever been challenging to maintain the clarity of the ethos or let's say the mission in quotes of the local project over the course of the lifetime of it, as you've expanded in particular to having all these people, because with all the people comes with a bunch of other responsibilities. And I feel like I've seen it many times, and we've all seen it, where a person who has a clear vision, when they grow, usually it's past like 20 people at that, there's like breaks, right? Then things start to get hazy because you're just bombarded with a bunch of different things. And now you have people who you don't see as often, and you don't know what they're doing maybe, and all these kinds of things. So has it ever been difficult to maintain that the focus of the local project?
Yeah, I think in terms of the mission statement, and I didn't even know if I knew what a mission statement was back, 8 years ago. But, the amazing thing is, when I did that very first interview, the mission behind that was to celebrate design and the person behind that particular design. And I think to today as well, and granted now we're doing, commercial and hospitality projects and furniture and residential architecture. At its core, that is still what we do, is we celebrate design and the people behind it. And that has never changed over the 8 years. And I don't see that changing anytime soon at all, because I think that's the key to our success. But to answer your question about, the growth that has come with it as well, and that's 100% the biggest challenge that I've faced personally with, growing this business is that, when it was 10 of us or 15 of us, there was this amazing relationship you had with every single person in the business. And, I could sit down and ask every single person in the office how their day is, how they're going, what's new with them, and then get on to my work. Now that there's 60...
You're just saying hi to people like all day, 7 days a week. You're just getting to know people.
I wouldn't get any work done if I did it, but it's something I battle with, because it's, it is hard. Like I do want to have that relationship, and I do want to know how every single person is going, but it's just not possible, unfortunately. And I try so hard, obviously, to have a great relationship with every single one. And I obviously do have a really good relationship, but that close, tight-knit relationship, when there was 5 or 10 of us, it's hard saying goodbye to that, and focusing on continuing to build the business so that we can, grow not only the business, but the people within it, and they can go on their own journey too.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I certainly understand everything you're saying. I also think that when you have the thing that you produce, in your case, it's a bunch of different things, but it's media, let's call it. When the product is so clear and focused and clean, and it's just honest for what it's trying to do, I think that also really helps a large body of people find synergy and have camaraderie and focus because of that thing. And I'm thinking about it from a perspective, of course, as an architect. Like when I've worked at places of small size and large size, and I've always felt that when the work has a very clear identity to it, it doesn't matter, it does matter, but when the office is large, it's still like, it helps it. Versus if you work in an office and you're, say, 250 people, which is large, and their work is a bunch of different kind of sort of design styles run by different departments, it's really hard to feel like you're part of a unit and feel that kind of camaraderie that you were talking about.
Definitely. Yeah, I can imagine. 250 is a humongous number.
That's your future.
So interesting. I know. But yeah, it would be incredibly hard. But yeah, I think us having that clear direction and that clear mission, as as apparent as it is now, it's again the key to our success. And everyone in this business, they love what we do, and they love kind of celebrating again people and design and stories, and we all have a passion for it. So it's a great bunch of people. It's an amazing bunch of people, and making sure that they understand, the plan and the goals and where we're headed is so important, because like you said, as soon as there's too many outbreaks or there's too many different things going on, you can lose sight of actually what you're there for. And yeah, that's when a business, isn't always working as good as it can. And I've learned that the hard way. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's my question.
Okay. Well, I got a question. So how do you guys decide what projects to publish?
Yeah, I think what we do essentially is, we look at everything that comes through and all of the outreach that we've done as well. And I guess one of the things about the local project is we're not thematic with, you know, the print publications that we release or the books that we release for the most part, as well as the video and digital content. You know, when there is a great story in front of us and, you know, a great story to tell, we will, you know, confirm almost on the spot, hey, we're happy to run this and we can put it in the next printed publication or the next book, or we'd love to, you know, send the video team out there. But really it's, you know, looking at everything that comes in, having the editorial sit down and review this. And like I said, almost like in a circle and saying, hey, this is what we've got on the plate, and really just going from there and getting back to people as soon as we can. And, you know, I think not having themes and especially our print has always worked to our power, in the sense that, you know, I know that one of the most frustrating things for designers and firms and studios is that, you know, you might have an amazing project which you've completed and then you've waited 2 years for the landscaping to come through and then you've photographed it and then it goes to a publication and they go, well, this is going to be great for our next year's issue because of this theme. And, you know, the embargo is for, you know, 12 months, give or take. I can only imagine how frustrating that is. But I think by removing the themes and having, you know, the stories and storylines be at the forefront, regardless of what the project looks like or the home or the house, that allows us to say, yes, we love this. Yes, we'd love to shoot it, or we'd love to put it in ABC. It'll be in the next edition. And, you know, the editorial team often slaps me on the wrist for this, but, you know, we get amazing projects landing on our desktop, and I'm often asking them, let's try and squeeze in one more project into this, and they're going, Aidan, come on, the mag's already 400 pages, we can't fit another one in. But again, it plays to our strengths that there is no themes, and we really just take every project and home and story as it is and just kind of break it down and say, yeah, let's go ahead with this, or being open with the firm and studio and saying, hey guys, sorry, this isn't quite what we're after because of reason ABC, but please let us know what other projects you're working on.
Was there a moment where you wanted to have themes? I never thought about that question before this conversation, before you brought it up, but you're right. A lot of publications do have themes that are set by quarter, by half year, or by year or whatever. Have you ever been tempted to have that?
Not really, to be honest with you. Probably to the same point of, like, if it's an amazing story, then let's go chase it and let's get it out to our audience ASAP. So it hasn't crossed my mind really, but who knows where the future will land.
Are there any projects that you would not publish? So things that you see in a project and you're like, yeah, this is not a good fit, or I don't know, something else?
I think some of the more obvious ones, like the cash grab developments, we always kind of put in a pile and say no thank you to those. But I think for us, what is incredibly important, both internally and then also externally in terms of the images and content that we get sent, is that we need to make sure that that content that we're receiving, especially if, you know, the architect or firm or studio has shot it themselves, is the best content possible. And you know, I know from a firm and studio's point of view that investing in photography and styling and having people on set and getting access, it's incredibly arduous, it's incredibly expensive, but I cannot tell you the importance of investing in content creation, not only just for getting it out to media, but for yourselves as well. It's one thing that we always say, especially to emerging firms and studios, is that save up and make sure you can try and produce the best content possible, because the mileage that you will see out of working with the best of the best, whether it's that amazing photographer, amazing videographer or stylist, the content will go so much further. And you reap the rewards from that. So that's another clear thing we obviously look out for, is just quality images, quality styling. And, you know, like for us, it's not about the homes or houses or projects, the bigger or better. Usually it comes down to the story behind it. And often, you know, some of our most viewed videos and most read articles are smaller, beautiful projects or apartments where they have a quirky detail or they have a quirky design behind it and an interesting homeowner, and the architect's incredibly well articulated. Those are the projects with the strong stories that do well on probably not only our, you know, channels, but, you know, a lot of publishers' channels as well. Yeah.
I agree also with what you were saying about the longer term payoff of having high quality, I guess, production photographs and things like that. It is a crazy thing and I appreciate your words about how difficult it is for an average architecture office to invest in that, because it is, at least in the United States, I'm not sure about other places, it is an insane amount of money that one has to spend on a photographer, on styling. And really, actually, those are the only two, well, then there's a publicist perhaps, but let's say those are the two things for a project, the photographer and styling. But it's so much money, and I know for a lot of small offices, it's hard. They're like, I can't. This is close to whatever percentage of my fee. I don't know how I can put this into it.
But it's really an investment in your own business, and at the end of the day, that documentation is the only thing as architects and designers we will have and keep from that project. So, I think having like the right photographer and the right photography it is crucial, because we do market our services with those elements. So even for, our own websites, the quality of the image you put out there is going to represent the quality of your business, or the image what your business is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it is a chunk. It is a chunk.
I don't know if it's like that everywhere though, or if it's specific to California.
I don't know.
California's expensive.
Oh, it is. I've seen some of the fees come through, and it is crazy. It's definitely well above, obviously, Australia, just even with the USD versus AUD, obviously. But yeah, I've seen some fees there, and it is insane. But I know it's easy for us to say, invest in content, but wherever possible, I might say, invest where you can.
Responsibly. We don't want anyone going broke.
Responsibly. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Oh yeah. My question I forgot was what. So you started the local project. You were the guy behind the cameras and the questions, interviewing the makers and the designers and the architects. What is your role now that you have 60 people in the team? Are you still doing some of that kind of like work on the ground, or are you just, keeping the ship afloat and ahead and planning for the next big wave?
I like to consider myself a professional emailer now. I think that takes up most of my time. Unfortunately, I don't get out to the projects anymore, and I'll still catch up with firms and studios and architects where I can. But I think where my head's at is really focusing on strategy of the business, and we're always chasing what is the next medium and what is the next way to tell stories. And the biggest thing that I've had my head in for the last probably 6 months is we've just finished the build of our new 3-level production studio, which is just around the corner from where I am now. Wow. And that has been a labor of love, but for us, it's and a credit to you guys. And after having listened to a lot of your episodes and the content you produce, but a lot of the strategy I've been working on is how do we produce long to mid-form educational content? And the simple answer to that seems to be audiovisual podcasting, like you guys do as well. So we're kind of sitting down and strategizing that at the moment, and about to release a series, 5 different series of audiovisual podcasts where audiences these days, they're craving knowledge, but they're not just craving it. They want it to be digestible, and they want it to be easy to consume as well. So for me at the moment, my day to day is sitting down, thinking of podcast episodes and how we're going to film it, who the guests are going to be. And I love that. I love that. It's an incredibly hard thing to do, and there is not always a right answer to it, and I know we're going to make a million mistakes along the way, but that's the beauty of it, is that again, you've just got to take a leap of faith and just trust that by creating new mediums and new stories, that is what your audience want to hear and consume, and will hopefully continue to grow.
That's fantastic. When you say educational, are you thinking of specific, what does that mean? Are there specific topics you have in mind? Is it a direction to it? Is it educational for designers, for non-designers, architects and designers?
Definitely a mix of both. And I guess the 5 series that they're breaking it down into, or a few of them anyway, is kind of like the journey of designing a home and educating people on what to expect as they're about to go on the journey. Another one is hospitality insights, where we're not just sitting down with interior designers and architects who create a beautiful hotel or design a beautiful restaurant, but we're getting in the owner of the restaurant or hotel, and we're getting in the head chef and talking about how the whole space has been influenced, from the design of the menu to the actual food itself, to the experience of walking into it. Another one is in working title, but 10 design essentials, where we're bringing in architects and designers and essentially getting them to talk to 10 of their favorite products or materials or bits and pieces that they've been using on recent projects as well, and educating our audience on different materials, whether they're sustainable or whatever else they might be. And then there's a few others in the works as well, but you guys have definitely got the scoop on that. But yeah, this is the fun stuff, really, is just creating those series and understanding what our audience considers educational as well, and A/B testing a lot of it too. And like I said, we're going to make a few mistakes and we're going to put some content out there that doesn't quite hit. But I think for us is kind of like veering out of the beautiful homes and houses and projects, which we'll still do, of course, every single day, but, slightly opening it into this other type of content where we're still celebrating the people behind the design and industry leaders and emerging architects, and hearing what they have to say in their opinion, I think is a clear next step for our business.
I could feel a Netflix series.
I wrote down Netflix in my notes just now. Yeah.
As you were describing it, I'm like, you need to put that on TV. You need to put that, like for like a 5-season, 10 episode, type of thing. Like everybody gotta get on it. That sounds like a really exciting project. So I'm looking forward to it.
But on that though, have you guys you must have thought about TV or some kind of format like that, like on Netflix or whatever streaming?
Like a docuseries.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. We've had a few of them reach out. None of the big names, or a few local Aussie ones that have reached out as well. But it hasn't quite been a right fit. But if you guys have any contacts, please feel free to pass on what I'd love to pitch.
Have a conversation.
Mostly I would love to see that happen also because I am so sick and tired of all of this HGTV. I don't know if you guys have that over there too, but it's just people outside of the profession and outside of the ones doing the work, talking about the work, not knowing anything about it. And I feel like we need to put the voice of the people who are doing the work out there. And yeah.
Great. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, I agree as well.
So I don't have a contact yet, but I will be working on it.
But kind of big picture thinking is, it's like, it's a funny thing. That's one of the many reasons why we had initially started the podcast was, one, we didn't have any assumptions that it was going to be successful. I'm going to be very clear about that when we started. But part of the goal or the thought was, well, if we can do something and actually like just educate people about what we do, the two of us specifically, but also architects in general. And there's many different ways we try and do that. Sometimes it's not successful, but that's underlying. That's like kind of the point of the whole thing, really. And it was sort of in response to what we had felt through from a very cursory level of research of the media out there, that there wasn't that happening, right? And to Marina's point, if you look at the obvious ones that everyone knows about, like HGTV or whatever $5 billion listing in Malibu, like this kind of like thing, like you're saying, the development properties are just bigger is better and more money is better. Obviously for us and for basically all architects, it's like it kind of hurts. It's like, this is absolutely not shouldn't be the focus. And to be honest, as an architect, it's detrimental to what we do because it gives people the wrong impression. First, I think the value system is wrong. We put that out there, but it gives the wrong impression about what we offer. And I'm reminded now that we had an architect on the show. I'm trying to think if this conversation happened on the show or not. So I have to be careful. But it was conveyed to me by an architect who we know and we trust and we love. They do great work. That a media company would they wanted to do something with an architect, but it wasn't a good fit because the media company was like, okay, we need you to go out there and like swing your hammer and knock down walls. And the architect friend was like, that's not what I do. Like, I don't ever use a hammer to knock down walls. But at least at that time in the United States in that specific situation, that was the friction, right? This is the perception that people have, and this is the perception that that the company felt like they had to cater toward, which of course for architects it's
well, it's because they're presenting the work and the profession as entertainment rather than just presenting it as a profession, which is much more serious than that. you know. It's like it's for the show, right? And that's why real estate, kind of reality TV works really well, is that it's all about the drama and, you know, like the outfit and the lighting and the money shot and like the drone view. It's not about what the thing that they're shooting is actually about, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And that's where I think like this more so educational path is going to be the key to content moving forward, or it has been for however many years and decades anyway. But I think, you know, keeping that authenticity in the content that you create, like you guys have created the whole time with this podcast. And I'm sure even, you know, some of the episodes you've done, which, you know, have been a miss or whatever you've said, you've still enjoyed that and you've still had amazing conversations and gained some amazing knowledge from those conversations too. And I think that's what we're chasing with this, and whether it does incredibly well or it, you know, it absolutely slumps, for us to kind of have those conversations with industry leaders and whatever it might be. That's key for us. Yeah.
Random question we wrote down is, what do you think you would be doing today if you had not made that first post for the local project and then continued on with the local project?
I reckon so. I love food, and and I should clarify by saying I'm not a great cook, but my old man, he's a chef, and I grew up eating anything and everything under the sun, really. So I think if it wasn't architecture media, I would love a career in, you know, hospitality and food and exploring different cultures and around the food that different cultures create. So, if it wasn't architecture on this YouTube channel, I'm sure it might be me traveling around Asia or, you know, the States or whatever it might be, trying everything I can and seeing where that lands.
Maybe you could merge both. You can, like, you know, taste like amazing food in beautiful places and like make it a, you know, a food architecture design show. That could be pretty cool.
Well, that would definitely appeal to a much wider audience, that's for sure.
Definitely. That could be the 6th podcast series, actually. That could be, me trialing food in these restaurants.
Could be like
just the founder of the Dolka Project just eating. That's what it is. Well, this is interesting. And that'll be the one that gets the most hits.
I know, right? We don't need that. Yeah.
But it's a kind of well, that's really cool, but it reminds me that I think one of the things that we've always been thinking about is, you know, how do we appeal to a larger audience, and not just the hardcore, not just architects and then the hardcore architecture fans. This is something we're always thinking about, and it's a difficult thing. But one of the thoughts I've always had was if you could introduce something else that is on the surface or even really has nothing to do with architecture. You don't want it to be like an obvious random thing, like eating a Twinkie in like a Osenkundig house, but like, you know, which is like a great juxtaposition, actually. Foods that don't belong. But like, you know, how do you engage with the larger audience? And to be honest, actually, the only thing that we've really found that has worked to some level is just the education aspect. Because otherwise it feels forced, or it's too, like I found through the show, if you produce things that feel too inconsistent or it's too much variety, people freak out. Listeners, audience are like, wait, what is this? What are you talking about? What is this about? This has nothing to do with the previous episode or whatever it was. So yeah, education actually for us has been probably the only serious route to appealing to a larger audience.
What was the very first episode you guys did, out of curiosity? Do you remember?
Oh, geez.
Oh, no, nobody should listen to that one.
So, yeah.
Well, the thing is, you know, I mean, kind of like you, we started without a specific plan or topic, or really like trying to script, you know, what the discussion was going to be about. It was just very organic and...
But we were way less focused than what you started with, Aidan, because you had interviews and that was it.
Oh yeah, like, no, we were not at that level.
But to answer your question, the very first episode, as were the first like handful of them, were just the two of us sitting at our kitchen island in like super deep Brooklyn, way out there, and just talking about stuff. And actually ties into the question of how to appeal to a larger audience. my initial thought with the show was that we could have it be a show about just everyday life and just talk about random things, just like everyday conversation, but it's through the lens of two architects. And we could weave in ideas that architects employ and architecture throughout the conversation as a way to have people learn about architecture and what we do and how we think, without it being specifically about, okay, on this episode, we're going to talk about, I don't know, insulation of walls. So the idea was that. And as a result, oh God, this is just it. We're gonna get in trouble for this because people are gonna go back and listen to the first episode. I just know it.
We're gonna see a spike on the listenership of episode 1 after this.
To 378 episodes without having to answer this question. We should have known better. But so as a result, a lot of the early recordings were like super wild, not PC. A lot of swearing, a lot of humor, comedy, a lot of jokes that didn't make sense and failed. Nothing appropriate. Because I thought like we could do this. We could do a long format, and then people will come to the show because of that aspect to it.
Well, and at the time too, we had pseudonames, so we were like very free, and you know the things that we wanted to say. Yeah, because
you're giving away way too much information.
I'm gonna get in trouble. After.
So we found out after a period of time that was a very unsuccessful model. That people just didn't. It was a very few people who wanted to listen to two unknown people talk about random stuff. And I realized, oh yeah, like we're not celebrities. So, you know, people are interested in Brad Pitt talking about the lint in his pocket, but no one cares if I'm talking about it.
Well, and people like consistency and being able to, you know, somewhat, you know, not put you in a box, but kind of put you in a box, right? They know on Tuesday, these guys have an episode that's getting released. It's going to be mostly either an interview or just the two of them talking about stuff. Yeah. And it's just kind of like, how do you fit in their routine, especially if you have content that gets published regularly? Like how and when would you fit in people's routine? And if you're just kind of a wild card, I think it's pretty hard.
But that's the beauty of trial and error, though, right?
Yeah,
you know, you guys took that leap and you guys recorded that first episode, and look at the journey that you guys have been on as well. And you know, that's what I'm excited for our side of things as well. Is like, I know we're going to have those odd episodes and odd categories and odd starts to whatever it might be, but I'm just excited to see where it lands in the future and how we build on it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's the thing. Like, you know, we have a lot of people that we meet who want to start something, and there's kind of like this fear of starting and failing, or starting without knowing exactly what you want to start. But I think, as you mentioned, like the key is just to try it out. You know, it was like, you know, approaching sponsors or clients. While the first one is probably not going to work out, but after a few practice rounds and perseverance, like eventually something's gonna pay off, and I think that's what it takes.
Exactly.
I had a question about, okay, let's shift back to normal world here. I had a question about publications and all the space that you're in. Because again, as you mentioned, it wasn't like you did 4 years of journalism school or whatever school that went into this. You just started. Has there been anything about the various medias or all of it that has kind of surprised you in terms of like how they work?
Yeah, I think probably without trying to get myself in too much trouble, like I did look at some of the other publishers and whatnot out there at the time that I started, or a couple of years afterwards. And, you know, there were a lot of other publications that just kind of felt a little bit old school and traditionalist. And, you know, they'd been around for 50, 60, 70 years. So there wasn't a whole heap of change in what they were doing, I saw, and hence the opportunity for us to come in as a disruptor. But I think this again speaks to the blessing of naivety, because, you know, whether it was producing a print publication or producing our first video or doing our first Instagram post, I just thought, you know, this will be a bit of fun. This should be relatively easy, and definitely, you know, learned the hard way on. I remember our first video in Melbourne 5 years ago, and I thought, oh, this will be fine. Everything will go to plan, and, you know, the architects won't be late for their interview, and, you know, whatever it might be. But we were able to kind of just go with the flow and learn on set and the hard way with how everything came together. And even with print, what I thought would be relatively easy come together relatively easily. That was another huge experience too. But once we had got the hang of it and those bits and pieces, we just found it, you know, it just became the norm, and it just became part of our schedule. So nothing too surprising, but a lot of learning on the job. But yeah.
I just have a couple of final questions. One for me is, what in architecture is exciting to you today?
I think the amount of young talent that's coming out at the moment, some of the emerging design studios and the emerging firms and studios is phenomenal. And I think through digital and social channels and the amount of kind of niche publishers that are still out there, we're able to kind of connect and see the work that's coming out a little bit more as well. But, you know, I look at some of these firms that are barely 2, 3, 4 years old, and, you know, some of the first projects that they're working on, whether they're incredibly small or mid-size, whatever it might be, the talent that is coming out and the emphasis on the content creation side of things and the awareness that they have on how to market their work is just incredibly impressive. And, you know, this is probably a good example of, you know, these younger firms and studios with, you know, people around 25 to 30. They've lived through this digital media and how it's all evolved, and they understand how to work it and to market it. And I'm genuinely excited to watch these firms go from emerging to established to industry leaders. And there's a lot coming through across Australia and New Zealand and especially the US as well, which has me very, very excited.
Well, one of the final questions that we usually ask on the show is, what is your favorite building? And you see a lot of those, so and a lot of really good ones. So it might be a very hard question for you to answer. But if there is one,
no, there's no if. You have to answer your favorite building.
Or if you have a favorite maker, it doesn't have to be a building. Yeah,
I want to know the favorite building.
Okay, if you have those.
Am I going to get in trouble? It's always hard for me to play favorites. That is a good question. I don't know if it's a boring answer from an Aussie like me, but, you know, I went to an event in the Sydney Opera House at the end of last year, and that place just bowls me over every single time I walk in there. And I know it's such a cliche answer from someone from Sydney as well, but, you know, I went in there and again for, you know, the 50th time and walked around and looked around, and every single time without fail, my jaw just hits the floor. It's incredibly special, and we're so lucky to have that here. So, again, a cliche answer.
Oh, that's awesome.
But unapologetic in a sense too.
That's awesome. Aidan, thank you so much for making the time on a Saturday morning for you. It's much appreciated. The chat was great. Might have to edit out some bits about us, but no, I'm just joking. We'll leave it in. That's what it is. No, thank you so much, really. And I also want to thank you for what you guys are doing, because as we've communicated in the show, but I'll say it again, that for us, and I speak for like all of the architects, it's really reassuring and makes us feel more optimistic when we see that there's a group of people and yourself trying to present quality and present architecture that's good. And that is the reason for presenting it and not other things. So that's appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. No, I appreciate it a lot, and it means a lot coming from you guys. So thank you, and thanks for your time.
Hi everyone, thanks for watching this video on YouTube. If you like what we're doing, then please support our show by hitting that subscribe button and liking and commenting on our videos.
You can also find us on most of the social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're mostly on Instagram. And you can reach out to the hotline, 213-222-6950. You can send a text message or leave a voicemail if you have any reaction to this recording, any questions you might have, or guest suggestion. Feel free to send it our way.
Cool. Thank you for watching, and see you next week.
Thanks. Bye-bye.